Hi, welcome to another video. Today I'm going to be talking about the third book in the Bridge Kingdom series by Danielle Jensen. This is the third book. It's called The Inadequate Heir. I really like this blue cover, but yeah, I'm going to be getting into my thoughts on this book. If you want some quick spoiler-free thoughts, basically, I liked it. I liked it a lot. I did not love the romance as much as I loved the first one, but also you should take that with a grain of salt because for me, switching characters in a series is always a really hard sell. I'm almost always mad about it when it happens, so that could be contributing a great deal. So anyways, this was a 4-star book for me. I really enjoyed it, don't get me wrong. I just didn't love the romance as much as I loved the first one. Anyways, after this there are going to be spoilers, so go ahead and click off this video if you don't want to be spoiled for The Inadequate Heir, and then also the rest of the series, obviously. So, let's get into the video. Alright everybody, so this third book in the series is about Karis, Laura's older brother, who's actually her full brother, and then Zara, who is the heir and general of the kingdom of Valcata, who's been at war with Meredrina, Laura and Karis's kingdom for no one even knows how long. It's called the Endless War, but this war is fought very differently than other wars in that basically it's a series of raids where people kill civilians and then run back to their own side before the other soldiers can retaliate. And then it's just this constant oh, they attacked us, well, we'll show them the consequences of that, and then they go to the other side and kill a bunch of civilians, right? So it's this terrible system. Karis is now the heir, the inadequate heir, to the throne of Meredrina, and that is because all 8 of his older brothers have died because they're all vicious and a little bit monstrous. But he's never had any interest in the throne or in fighting or anything like that. He likes to read. Yeah, but throughout the book... Okay, so here's what I'll say. I will forgive everything. Everything I didn't love as much about this book if it's because, unlike Laura's story, which is a redemption arc, if this is a corruption arc story for Karis, if that's what this is going to be, which it seems like it in this first book, but I'm sure he'll just magically everything will be fine in the fourth book. But if I'm wrong, and if this is a corruption arc, then I forgive everything, right? Everything that I'm about to complain about, which is not a lot, then all of that is genius. Right, so there's a chance that this is an extremely genius series of choices. Anyways, so Karis doesn't want anything to do with this war. He's supposed to be fighting this battle at Nerastus, I think is what it's called. It's this city that's between Meredrina and Valcata that they've been fighting over for so long that it's basically rubble, but they're still fighting over it as kind of a matter of pride. And he's supposed to be over Meredrina's forces there because now he's the heir and he's supposed to prove himself. But he does not care at all, and it's just gambling and drinking and hiring prostitutes. And Zara has a personal vendetta, right? Her mother was killed by Silas, the king, Karis and Laura's father, in a pretty gruesome way, and she was left there with the corpse for quite a while as a child, and then rescued by her aunt, who is the Empress of Valcata, and her aunt has raised her to be exactly like her and to fight this war and whatever. And so she has a personal vendetta, and she's out for vengeance, and that is her motivation for being a part of this war and for being the general, and that's how come she's the heir instead of her cousin, who's actually her aunt's son, is because she's motivated, and she listens to her aunt, and she adores her aunt. Anywho, she gets orders to stop the fighting because her mom wants to use the war with Ithacana that we see in these books, because this book overlaps with the Traitor Queen. It's the same timeline. And so we have seen what happens already, which is one of the other reasons I think this book was a little bit less successful than the others, is it didn't have that tension because I already knew what was going to happen. Which, it was still enjoyable. I really loved it, and I read it really fast. But it didn't have quite as much tension just because I already knew what was going to happen. Right, so it's overlapping. Her aunt is trying to use this whole thing with Ithacana and the bridge to strike at Meredrina. So she doesn't want there to be raids, so they pull all of their troops out of Nerastus to take the bridge and this final thing. So she's not supposed to be instigating. And she's like, I could end this whole thing if I go and kill Karis, which is stupid because there are a bunch of other heirs. But whatever, she decides to go over there. She doesn't really have a plan. It goes not super well, and he sees her and follows her. She steals his brother's letters. He follows her back, blah, blah, blah. There's this kind of flirty tension, and there's this jump over the river that's kind of dangerous that they both like some falls and everything, height and everything. And he jumps over, and she swears on her honor to return the letters, and so gives them back, and he releases her, and she doesn't realize that she's accidentally kept one letter, and he realizes that later as well. And since honor is very important to Velcottons, I don't know if I'm saying that right, but whatever, I'm trying. He's going to see her again. So he goes back the next day. She shows up and returns the letter to him, and they kind of have this conversation where, like, he indicates that he wants peace, and she's like, well, if you're not willing to sacrifice anything for your ideals, then, like, you're just as much of a hypocrite as everybody else. You have to actually be willing to sacrifice something if you truly believe in what you're doing. And he also, during this conversation, points out to her that her side is just as bad as his, because she's like, oh, y'all come in and you kill civilians. And he's like, what do you think y'all are doing? What do you think you're doing? Do you think that these civilians deserve it any more than yours? And so then she kind of has to grapple with this idea of, is she also a monster? Is she the monster in other kids' stories like Silas is in hers? And the answer is yes, I would say. Maybe not as gleefully malicious, but still, you know, there's just... She realizes that war is bad, and especially one that's fought against civilians. And so they keep meeting, because they've both found a person who understands them, and they can say these treasonous things too, without getting in trouble with their respective countries. Now, this is where I take an issue with the plot a little bit, which is that I understand this, feeling closeness, and with Karis, because of his role in the bridge, where he was, like, there, and his party was used to infiltrate the bridge, and this woman that he was making out with got killed in the middle of it, and, right? And so he just feels that everything that he touches, everyone that he is surrounded with, gets killed. And so we understand why this moment of intimacy, this connection, is important to him. For Zara, it's also like, oh, you know, she doesn't typically get to talk to people or connect in this way. So I understand why they felt a connection. I don't buy that they were in love as quickly as this book wants you to think that they're in love. So they go to her side one night and almost get caught and, like, spend some time on a roof, and there's, like, this little star book that he gives her, and they have, like, a slightly romantic moment. And then the next time that they meet, I think literally the next time, no, it's not, they meet, and he gives her some information about an attack that's going to happen from his side, because he wants to stop the civilians from getting injured and have the armies fight each other like they're supposed to do. And so that happens, and, you know, it's broken up pretty quickly, because once his side sees that the army is there, they leave, right? And so they are both thinking that they can actually kind of stop this war by stopping all of the raids against the civilians by providing each other with this information, though it's kind of treason to their respective countries. Once his information pans out, she comes back, and they go to his side and rent a room and have, you know, a romantic night or whatever, which I also didn't love that this book had a lot more of explicit romantic content than the other ones, but, you know, at the end of the day, it's okay. I didn't think it was terrible. It was just a lot more than the other ones, which makes sense because Karis is a lot more that way, right? So it was fine. But, and that's just a personal preference thing. That has nothing to do with, like, my rating for the book. Anyways, and then she, in the morning, in the light of day, sees his eyes, which are very distinctive, and, like, mark him as an heir to Silas, and freaks out because she realizes who he is, because since she was going to kill him the first night, she has a pretty accurate description of his appearance, and so she knows who he is. Freaks out and leaves, and gets herself captured. And then he has to make some very quick decisions to save her. We've seen him kill one person, and that was the first person he ever killed, and that was on a raid that her side perpetrated, her cousin, and he was trying to rescue some kids from a burning building, and a guy was trying to fight him while he was rescuing the kids and their mother, so, you know, sort of had to do it, right? But in this moment, he orders a man whipped for hitting her because he has to protect her because they all want to kill her and, like, catapult her body back across the river. Anyway, he's like, no, she would be way better as a political prisoner, and, like, pulls out all the stops, right? And then throughout the book, you know, they go back to his father, and he hides her with the harem wives who also hate everyone from her country, because everybody hates each other from these countries, by the way. And he's trying to, like, scheme, but he's in a little bit over his head, which I actually didn't like as much either, because in Traitor Queen, it seems like Karis is, like, a master of scheming. On reality, he's really pretty far in over his head, right? So he's kind of riling up the crowds against his father, instigating sort of rebellion for Aaron being captured, because this is with the Traitor Queen. He strikes this deal with Aaron and kind of the harem wives to get Zara out of there. The harem wives, though, want her to kill Silas, which would destroy any chance of their future relationship, right? But this has been her whole life goal, is to murder this dude, and she gives it up basically for Karis. I mean, also because then there could never be peace between their countries, but, like, we all know why it was. But this whole time, like, we understand why he wants to save her, right? Because he is tired of people dying because of him. And I can even understand him mistaking this feeling for love, when what it is a connection and, like, some romantic tension. But they don't know each other very well. And she also pretty quickly trusts him and drops her guard. And I thought it would have been a lot better if she had not trusted him. But instead she's like, no, he seems genuine, this is fine. I'm like, no, like, you can't give up who you are as a character for this. But they both kind of did, and very quickly. And I did not love that. And I really could have bought it if he'd had this kind of obsession with her that he was labeling as love, because he doesn't really understand what that is. And she's sort of like, yeah, okay, you know, whatever, right? You're fine. You're sweet. You can get me out of here. Let's do that, right? But instead, it seems like she also, like, loves him. And is she putting him first? No, not initially. She wants to kill Silas more than she wants to be with him. But then she changes that, despite not getting to interact with him very much. And so, I thought that I like a slow burn romance a lot better, and I thought that this wasn't that. It was just very quick that they were in love, and then the book just kind of, like, wants you to buy that they're in love for the rest of the book, and I was like, I don't buy it. I mean, I do, but what I would have liked a lot better is if she had been kind of using him, and he had been mistaking kind of a crush and an obsession for love. And maybe that's what's happening, right? Because the book ends with, like, he gets her out, they have some great times on a boat, and she goes home and has to deal with Aaron and Laura showing up and, like, convincing her aunt that she's fine and everything's good again, even though her aunt, like, was totally leaving her out to dry, you know, when she got captured, right? Didn't want to make any negotiation for her whatsoever because she was more useful as a martyr. And so we see that her aunt is kind of, you know, not the greatest, right? Which I like. After that, Karis has to go back to Nerastus, and they're still kind of doing this whole battle thing, and he wants to defy his father, and all that's fine and well, right? But then Laura and Aaron are going to do their whole attack to get the bridge back, and Zara wants to help, and then go back and accept the consequences for treason, and I'm like, just leave, stay with Karis, or go to Ithacon. Like, you dying serves no purpose, but whatever, she wants to do that, and Karis is like, I'm not going to let you do that. So he goes home, tells his dad the plan, creates his own plan, which is better than his dad's plan, which is the plan to take Arenal and remove the troops from the north and south entrances to the bridge to save Zara. And again, I could see him making that choice because he has been raised very poorly and ultimately is kind of selfish and is willing to make these monstrous choices just like his father, right? Like a corruption arc, I would love. And I mean, that's kind of what happens, right? But I'm sure he gets just redeemed in the next book, right? But if he doesn't, if this is a corruption arc that takes a lot longer to resolve than one book, I'm all in. You know, like, I could see him getting redeemed later in the series or something like that, but, like, you know, he makes some terrible choices on purpose. And so this book ends with a betrayal, just like the Bridge Kingdom, but instead the betrayal is perfectly intentional, and to save his love interest. And he makes just unacceptable choices, right? He's willing to sacrifice so many innocent people and also kind of take away Zara's choice. And if this is his path to becoming a villain, then so be it. I take back everything I said, right? Except for the things about Zara being in love with him, which I think are a little bit silly. But on his end, then I buy everything, right? And so she's like, I don't want to see you again, blah, 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 whatever. And then she goes home, and her aunt finds out because the magpie, for some reason, oh, he's like the spy master dude. Anyway, kills himself and sends a message about his affair with Zara, and the queen is like, the empress is like, oh, that's unacceptable, whatever, I'm sending you to this island thing where no one ever has escaped. Whatever. And then Karis is like, it's time to talk to my sister. And if the next book is from Laura's perspective again, I'm going to be so happy. I I'm gonna be so happy. I love Laura and Aaron. They're great. So if they have to go rescue Zara and the book is about them again, I will be thrilled. But probably it isn't. And they're just there or whatever, which is fine. But yeah, Karis, if he keeps going down this path where he started out as a good character, but kind of a coward, and a little bit selfish, and he continues down the selfish path, making more and more and more unacceptable decisions and terrible decisions for his kingdom because of this woman who slowly, like, stops loving him back in return, and he's just, like, obsessed and becomes kind of villainous, then, like, that would be interesting, right? That would set up the next books as well. So we'll see what happens. I like Zara, I like Karis as characters. I just wished that it had taken more of the book for them to get together, or at least for them to be in love. But it felt really quick to me, and I'm never really a fan of that as much. So, what are you going to do? But I really liked the world building that we got in this one, and all of the understanding that we got kind of about the political machinations that we didn't really understand before. So I think this next book could be really interesting, because I definitely got the vibes that the Empress, like, something was going on. And then when we find out that she's definitely a villain and she had her sister killed and everything, you're like, all right, you know, this is the next villain. Because Silas dies, right, at the end of this book and at the end of Traitor Queen. And Silas was the main villain, that everything was his fault, you know. But now we have someone else to blame, and that should be really, really interesting to see that play out. So I'm excited for that. And I'm excited to see if this relationship between Karis and Zara goes a different direction than what I'm thinking. Which I'm thinking right now they're going to get back together and it's all going to be fine. If it doesn't go that way, I would be very interested. Because we need a new villain, and I assume the aunt's going to die in the next book. Like, she's gotta. And if the new villain is Karis, I would be very interested in that. Because it would be such a good parallel to Laura's story, which is that Laura starts out as a villain, but a selfless villain, interestingly, and then gets a redemption arc as she learns to love. Whereas Karis starts out as a selfish pacifist, and as he mistakenly sort of is in love, maybe, he becomes a villain. Like, that would be very, very interesting as a parallel. But yeah, I bet she's gonna write a 5th and 6th book about Anna and whatever the prince is that she's supposed to be marrying, because that's the other part of the treaty, and that's more of an arranged marriage situation, and those are always a lot easier to build tension more quickly because they're already married. So there's this natural tension of the, like, well, we have to get together eventually, you know. And I like a romance like that a lot better, and I really liked Anna as a character as well. So I'm excited for that, because we also haven't heard as much about those two northern kingdoms, and I'm really interested in that. So I'm hoping that that's what the, like, 5th and 6th book will be, if those happen. But yeah, so I still like this book. I would still recommend it. It's still really good, and the world building in it is amazing. Like, the new information that you get that really helps you understand what's happening in those books is great. And I loved the characters. I just didn't love the romance, and that's it. So I gave it 4 stars instead of 5, just because the romance did not hit for me. But it's also just because it's not my personal preference for romance. I prefer a slow burn, like in the Bridge Kingdom, where they don't get together until the end. I prefer a sweeter romance as well, so we'll see, I guess. I'm gonna definitely pick up the next one, though, when it comes out, Lord willing, obviously, because I think it's not gonna happen for a while, so I don't know, hopefully I'll remember, and I should mark it down when the next one's coming out, because I believe it's coming out on Audible first in, like, May, but I don't really do audiobooks so much because my attention span for listening to something for that long is not great, and I also don't want to pay for Audible. So I'm probably going to wait for the print books to come out, so I don't know when that's going to be, but hopefully I'll remember and pick it up, because I love this series, but I just want more of Laura and Aaron. Like, is that so much to ask? Anyways, everybody, thank you so much for watching this video. Bye!